everyone, welcome back to the channel where I help you navigate post-college with more ease and less stress. Alright, let's dive straight into today's topic. Do you need to go to grad school? Now this question may be on your mind depending on where you got your bachelor's degree and on your future career goals and plans. It can get pretty convoluted and daunting thinking about it. I've gone down the same rabbit trail myself and I understand how many questions there are to consider. Like, what program should you apply to? How long will the program take? Where should you apply? Will this help me in my career in the way I think it will? And most importantly, how much will it cost and who's going to pay for it? So in today's video, I'm going to give you 5 steps to consider in your assessment process and some best practices to make the most informed and best decision for you. Be sure to watch until the end of the video because I'm going to walk you through my Beyond the Bachelor's roadmap that I've created to help you navigate this decision and make the most informed, best choice for your particular situation. All right, with that being said, let's dive into step 1. Step 1 is to assess your career goals. A great place to start is with your bachelor's degree. Now, I know that sometimes not everyone gets a degree in something that they're passionate about, but let's say you're someone who got a degree in a field that you plan on sticking with and growing into, just as an example. This is your starting point. By the end of your 4 years in college, you should have some kind of knowledge or idea about the career path and what your degree can do for you, where it can take you. So start there. You obviously don't need to have a crystal ball. You're not a genie. You don't have to know everything, but begin mapping out some short, mid, and long-term goals in this field. A great way to start this is by seeing what others in your field are doing. Get on LinkedIn, talk to your professors, talk to your school alumni in your field, and see what they're doing 3 to 5 years out or even more. And talk to them. Don't be afraid to send an email asking for 20 minutes of their time. People love talking about themselves, especially if they've kind of, worked their way up, if they've got into a really special role. They're more than willing to talk to you about their experience and about their path if you just ask. So don't be afraid to get on their calendar, ask them how they got to where they are, ask them if they feel that their degree has been worth it, their master's degree. Ask them if they think that you having a degree would be helpful and that if you should go pursue one. You want to really dig into their path and find out if having an extra degree is going to be helpful based on someone who's in that position that you aspire to be in. Another aspect of assessing your career goals is to look at job postings and seeing what the requirements are and desired qualifications are. So sometimes it's a mix of education and experience. Sometimes it's just experience. Sometimes it might be that they want to see if you went to get an extra degree, or it might be a combination of all of those, but you won't know unless you kind of do your homework and your research, even reach out to recruiters and see what they're wanting. Regardless of where you land, it's important you begin to do your homework and begin looking at the trajectory of your field by talking to those in the field and looking at current job postings. So step 2 is probably the most important step, and that is to consider the financial aspects of how or who is going to pay for this degree. And by who, I mean a future employer. Like, look, we all know that getting an advanced degree or graduate degree is expensive. It can be a burden on top of student loans already from your bachelor's degree, and adding another degree without any idea of how it's going to get paid for or any opportunities outside of federal aid is just really stressful. And you should consider all of your opportunities before you kind of just go straight for the government's help and student loans, and look at the options that are available to you. So with that being said, you need to look at scholarships, grad assistantships, where you might be able to conduct research and basically get paid to learn. And that's probably more in specialized fields or industries like psychology, counseling, education. You may not need to conduct research for an MBA program, right? That would be really unique. But consider what kind of teaching assistantship or graduate research you can do that are going to pay you, help pay for your tuition, reimburse you, pay a portion of your tuition, something like that. Some kind of arrangement that you can work out with them. Now, this might be teaching a class, grading papers, but hey, if it helps you out financially in any way you can work out kind of an arrangement, then go for it. Why not? So seriously, look at the costs. I don't want adding a degree that should be helpful turn out in 5 or 10 years down the road or more not being helpful, and then you're stuck paying student loans or having to find the income to pay for a degree that you aren't using. So look at the cost. Compare schools and programs based on cost. Try to find opportunities to get paid and learn at the same time. Again, if you're going through these steps after being in the workforce for a while, maybe as part of your annual review process with your employer, you make the ask and kind of bring in the value add of getting a master's degree and having them help you pay for it or reimburse you. You'll be surprised at how many employers are typically willing to invest in you if they can see kind of the value add of having a master's degree and how that's going to help them. So you really have to convey that, hey, I think this degree will not just help me, but it's going to help grow the business by X amount of dollars of revenue. You really have to kind of frame your ask in a way that shows them that you're not just going to get a degree on their dime and then you leave 6 months later. You want to show them that by me having this degree and by you helping me with this degree, I can do my job better. I can have specific knowledge from this degree, and that's going to help grow our business in this certain way. So don't be afraid to get your employer involved. I'm not saying to do this after like a year and you don't really have any longevity or it doesn't make sense for your field. Again, not everyone needs a master's degree. There are plenty of people who are in fulfilling careers and roles that have a bachelor's degree and are doing just fine. So you really need to kind of be in maybe a specialized niche field or industry, maybe engineering of some sort. Maybe it's, again, education. Maybe it's a very specific scientific field. Maybe you want to get like PhD eventually. So really think of how having a master's degree can add to a business and not just you personally, because you want to make the most compelling argument of why they should spend X amount of dollars on investing in you and in your career. And if they can see that you convey in a way that's going to help grow their business and make them more money, they're most likely going to be happy. So with that being said, this step is all about exploring all of your financial options and resources before taking out student loans. Obviously, student loans have a time and a place. If you have to rely on them, then go for it. But before you get to that point, consider all of your options, including your current and future employer. Step 3 is to do some self-reflection. Assess your strengths and weaknesses and ask yourself, am I academically prepared for the challenges of grad school? Is now the right time for me to devote several years to intensive education? Because when I say grad school is a sacrifice, I don't just mean financially, I mean for the people around you, for your social life, for other aspects of your life. It's a sacrifice for everyone involved. And if you're at a certain stage in life where you're wanting kids, you're wanting to get married, you want to travel and have all this freedom, you most likely aren't going to get that in grad school for 2 years or 3 years or however long your program is. So ask yourself, are you ready to make this sacrifice? Are the people around you ready? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And how are they going to kind of show up as I pursue grad school? And if you're mentally and physically ready to pursue grad school. I know my doctorate program, this is not a master's degree, obviously, but in my doctorate program, the director of the program on like the first day was like, don't have any major life events during these 2 years because you probably like won't make it in this program if you have a major life event. Obviously, there's no way you can control life sometimes. People have babies, get married, family members pass away, unfortunately. Like there are stressful times, and there were several of my classmates who just had life happen that they could not control and had to balance the two on top of being a parent and working full time and all of that. It was insane. So really consider the life around you that's happening or that you predict will happen. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball and you can't predict that, a parent's going to get sick in a year. God forbid that were to happen, right? But you just want to kind of consider what's going on. Do you want to start a family? Do you want to get married? Do you want to travel? Do you want to do something kind of unique that maybe grad school might not fit into? Ask yourself these questions because again, it's a sacrifice for you and your loved ones and friends, for everyone. So think about if you're in the right season to make such a big change. All right, step 4 is to do your homework on the specific school and program that you're wanting to attend or have your eye on. One of my most recent videos was a video where I reacted to a Caleb Hammer financial audit where he had a guest on who was looking at law schools and comparing a 6-point ranking difference in law schools. It was the University of Texas compared to the University of Michigan. Basically, that number is arbitrary and in my opinion is not what his guest should have been focusing on. Now, someone left a comment on that video that said, your school that you go to can be helpful. It's also dependent on like your grades and extracurriculars and stuff like that on whether you get into a law school or not. But in my opinion, after my assessment of that video, this particular guest had no business looking at schools outside of Texas simply because she wasn't in a financial place to do so, and she had a top 20 school right in her backyard with the University of Texas. Anyway, the point is that you should do your homework on the school you want to attend and whether or not that school has specific requirements or stipulations of their program. Consider things that actually matter to your future career. Look, like most employers just want to see you completed your degree, that you got the degree and you completed it. So keep that in mind when considering things like cost as well. You don't have to go to the most expensive school or what you deem or your family deems the most prestigious. Do thorough research, attend open houses, and connect with current and former students to gain insights about their program. And please, please, please look at factors that actually matter to your success and your degree completion and not just rankings or prestige. All right, the fifth and final step is to assess the location and campus culture of the school. Now, this may or may not apply to you depending on your program. I threw this in more for programs that are in like the healthcare industry because most healthcare programs will have like a clinical component to their program where students will have to travel in their own cars and vehicles and like find their own transportation to a clinical site, a hospital, a doctor's office, another campus location, another class that's located off campus, something like that. So consider the proximity of where you're going to live or where your main campus is to where you might have to travel for clinicals or other classes and stuff like that. So for example, I went to school here in Nashville and my program had several local connections to sport organizations here in Nashville. So by simply being in Nashville and the program being well connected, I had a plethora of opportunities to travel to different teams in the city and had internships with Vanderbilt Athletics, with the Titans. Students also work with like the Nashville Sounds minor league baseball team. We have the Nashville FC soccer team here as well. But all my classmates, and myself included, had to travel to those different locations and also make it to class. And just there's a lot of commuting because the nature of our program required us to get these internship hours on these different sites with these different teams. So if you're in a program like that, minus sport administration, or if you're in the healthcare field and have to travel to clinicals, keep that in mind when considering your master's program. So I knew that where I went to school for my master's, it was very well connected here in the city. It was in the city, first of all, which helped with what I was looking to do. So that made it easy on like teams that I had access to. So keep that in mind. If you don't like the city, you're more of like a rural person, like to be kind of out on the outskirts, you may have to travel a little bit of a distance into completing part of your program. Another aspect of this to consider is what is the campus culture like? It could matter to your program more than others as you may need to collaborate with other offices or departments across campus and have to interview undergrad students for research purposes and stuff like that. So campus culture can be of importance to you depending on your program. You want to make sure that your department has good relationships with those across campus and vice versa, that it's very collaborative. There's not like some underlying, drama that you don't know about before you accept into the program and stuff like that. So keep it in mind, just like proximity of your campus to where you might have to travel. And then if you are collaborating across campus, again, not every program this will apply to, and you might be able to just disregard this whole step anyway. But if you fall into any of these kind of like niche programs or fields and you might have to do research and do some cross collaboration, you want to ask about like what those relationships are like and make sure it's a positive experience for everyone involved. All right, so now I'm going to show you the Beyond the Bachelor's guide that I put together to help you assess if grad school is the right decision for your particular situation. I'm going to walk you through 2 hypothetical scenarios so you can kind of have a visual of how this might look for you as well. All right, so let's walk through kind of a hypothetical example here of someone who is considering grad school. So let's say we have Mike, who graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. So just a computer science degree. And he's been out of school for 3 years with his bachelor's and is considering going to grad school for either more computer science or tech or kind of an MBA. So say he's interested in the business side, might want to move to that, but also wants to continue to grow in more of his computer science and tech tech acumen. Maybe he wants to get into coding, software development, stuff like that. So let's say he works for Microsoft. The date we can leave blank. All right. So let's say his short-term goals are what he's in now. He's 3 years out. So let's say he's in like a project management role. So he's a project manager, and let's say his midterm goal is to become a director, and then long term he wants to be like a VP, or maybe he wants to do some consulting and become an entrepreneur and have his own company. And say, he's done informational interviews with 3 people, and each one has told him different tidbits about moving into more of like a business role or more of a tech side. So let's say he talked to this first person who has an MBA and is on the business side of tech, and then we have someone who is working for themselves and does coding for companies. And let's say we have someone who is a vice president and has worked their way up in whatever company, right? So we kind of have 3 different people in spaces that Mike is considering. And we know that tech has a pretty good industry outlook outside of some layoffs. But let's say Mike's been safe from layoffs and he is, looking at his next steps. And so the industry outlook is pretty positive. AI is on the rise. We have AI. We have stuff that Mike can do freelancing. All right. So let's say he's considering, as far as programs, some top kind of computer science tech programs. So I don't know what those would be. Let's just go with like a state school. We have one private program maybe, and then another state school, because Mike is financially conscious and knows that private schools are more expensive than state schools. As far as income opportunities, he would continue to work for his employer. So that would be working full time, which could help pay for this degree. And let's say he can be a part-time teaching assistant. And let's say also he can tutor undergrad computer science students. All right, so some school up program details. He's still kind of in the process, so hasn't really talked to that many people yet, but it really doesn't matter for him. His state schools, the state schools would be just fine and kind of get him to where he'd want to go, as well as the MBA programs would be just fine for him. Now, this is kind of where Mike is considering asking his employer, which would be Microsoft. I don't know if Microsoft helps a lot or not. I'd have to look into that. But for the case of this example, let's say that Microsoft, he's 3 years in now, so Microsoft would be willing to help a little bit. So yes, question mark. He would need some further kind of clearance, and he needs to maybe put like a value proposition together for his manager and team on why them helping with this degree would be helpful. All right, some personal aspects. Mike has assessed his strengths. He is creative, he's analytical, and he's a quick learner. We'll go with that. Definitely, again, do some self-reflection on those. Let's see, his weaknesses would maybe be that sometimes he might rush his work. He gets really excited, might get ahead of himself. Again, think through those. Let's see, Mike is dating someone and they're considering getting married in the next year or 2. So we have a future wedding to consider. We'll just keep it at that for now. Other than that, no really big life transitions. And let's say Mike's had some conversations with a former professor and that was really helpful, and he's still kind of getting those conversations together. So I'll just keep it at that for now. All right. So again, the goal is to lead to a thumbs up or thumbs down for graduate school. And kind of based on some of the loose information I put in here about Mike, I think what he decided is that right now he is going to stick with certifications and licenses because he's in tech and knows that he can do some self-learning. He can do some online boot camps. He can get some CompTIA certifications, and that he would be in a good spot to kind of do some of his own consulting work that can really help add to his career as well. And then maybe down the line, he'll consider grad school, but right now it's a no, especially with this future wedding coming up with his partner. He wants to be married first before considering grad school, which is also a very smart move personally. So there you have it. That's Mike. Let's walk through someone else, one more hypothetical. All right, so let's quickly walk through just one more example here of a hypothetical that's kind of non-tech related or business related. So let's say we have Mallory, who is 1 year out from her Bachelor of Arts degree in communication. So she's a comms major. Right now, her current employer is like kind of a local nonprofit doing some communications work with them. And that's our starting point. So over here on the far left, we have Mallory's career goals. And the short-term career goals was to just complete a year at this local nonprofit. So Mallory is still fresh, recent college grad, still figuring it out. So that's kind of her only short-term goal right now, which is completely fine. But she is thinking about some next steps. And that's why she's asking this question, should I go to grad school? So her midterm goals are, should I go to grad school? Should I do another year at the company? Or find a different company altogether? Some of her long-term career goals are to teach college. So one day Mallory might want to be a college professor, and she may want to work with special populations in speech. She might have some speech impediments or difficulties, or work with kind of vulnerable populations one day. The industry outlook, I assume, for communications is positive, just because we live in such a digital, media-heavy, social media society. So I'm going to go and assume it's a positive industry outlook, but based off of Mallory's goals here, that would kind of inform and help your research as far as the industry outlook. And because Mallory is only a year out, she's still building up that network. So going to give some grace here, and has only done an informational interview with a recent alumni as well. So still kind of building up that network. All right, on to the program side. So what is Mallory actually considering for grad school? So right now she has 3 schools, 2 private, 1 state school. Mallory is someone who understands the financial implications of a graduate degree. So she's already secured a scholarship, or will secure a scholarship at one of the private schools, and is looking to other financial options at the other 2. Some other options for income would also be a grad assistantship and teaching freshman communications classes, which would be great because if you go back to the long-term goals here, one of Mallory's goals is to teach college one day, which would be great experience to begin teaching freshmen while she's in grad school. Because Mallory is only a year out, has only been at her employer for a year, I wouldn't put any employer involvement here. But again, depending on your situation, you get to decide that, especially if you are going to be there for a while, if you foresee that, if they're a stable company. But because Mallory might leave her employer, might want to go to grad school, I'm not going to put any of that here. All right, over here on the personal side, one of her strengths is communications, obviously super bare bones. Do some more digging to get your strengths. If you were to go in an interview, obviously you'd want to have some kind of examples around communications, but for the sake of this example, we're going to put communications here. And then one of her weaknesses, let's say she's not as analytical around metrics and numbers and data as she might want to be, so she's going to grow in that area this year. One of her improvement areas is around analytics, and she has no foreseeable life transitions as of yet, still figuring it out, so nothing there, and still growing those conversations, still meeting people, so her only conversation so far is with the former professor. All right, that leads us down here to a thumbs up or a thumbs down on grad school for Mallory. So based off of what I put each of these 3 sections on career, program, and personal, I'm going to go ahead and say that in this example, I'm going to give a thumbs up for Mallory for grad school, because I will say I did get some pause on the financial aspect, but with the private schools, but because she already secured a scholarship, or will hypothetically secure a scholarship, I'm not as worried about at least one of the private schools, which this will help offset tuition, as well as she has 2 really solid opportunities for grad assistantship and teaching freshmen, which are both great opportunities for her, especially considering those long-term goals of teaching one day and working with special populations. Those will be fantastic experience to begin getting. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and give it the thumbs up for Mallory for grad school. So I know we covered a lot in today's video, but the bottom line is that a graduate or a master's degree is a huge investment, and I want you to feel confident when assessing whether graduate school is the right choice for your particular situation. There's not a right or wrong answer, but I hope that seeing the Beyond the Bachelor's guide helped you to kind of picture your own situation and assess whether a master's degree is the right choice for you, and how your other aspects of your personal and professional life are affected by pursuing a master's degree, and kind of how they're all intertwined and connected. So I hope this video was helpful for your educational journey. If you found any information helpful at all, please consider liking and subscribing, sharing it with other people who may need this visual or have questions about grad school. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.